Already mic testing, mic testing. Okay, perfect. Let me go to my main camera. Already we're live. And as you guys can tell by the title and thumbnail, today I'm going to be going over how to automate shapes in C++ using SDL3 or using SDL3 in C++. That said, today last stream I did go over and actually how to draw objects, and I've been doing that for the past 3 streams. That's it. Today I'm going to be learning how to automate them. So let's go to my gameplay screen. Then let's say something like, let's say I'm live exclamation. And guys, if I can't talk properly, that is because I'm not warmed up yet. That said, let's see. Listen up, people. The stream has begun, and so has your ascent. That pronounce it. Every master you admire was once a clumsy beginner who kept pushing while others gave up. Today, we're turning these static shapes into living motion. This is where your code breathes, where pixels move with purpose. Now, today's mission, automation, or in simpler terms, motion. Okay, we'll take these shapes you already know how to draw, rectangles, lines, circles, and give them life. Here's the concepts. You'll render a loop, okay, that big while loop that runs many times per second, around 60 frames per second. If your system's smooth, if you change your shape position variables a little bit every loop, you create an illusion of movement. So we go ahead and we create speeds. I'm assuming these are like velocities. Okay, this is speed in x-axis, speed in y-axis. Then inside your loop, x plus equals to direction x, y plus equals to direction y. Each frame the position shifts such, and your angle line or circle will start moving. We'll start simple, making your rectangle slide smoothly across the screen like a drafting spaceship. Okay, once you grasp that, we'll add bouncing, direction change, and maybe even multiple shapes. Okay, ready to move your first shape, people? Let me say something like you should say. That said, I don't know anything about moving shapes. I used to do it in by games using velocity. Okay, and then adding the velocity to, let's go with something like adding the velocity to the, let's say, x-axis or y-axis. And also I used a let's say if statement to get the object to not leave the window. Okay, let's see. Okay, good. You remember the essence of motion, velocity, boundaries. That's exactly the same concept, just written in C++ with SDL's flavor instead of Python's. Let's rebuild our logic line by line with pure control like a swordsman perfecting every swing. So here's the foundation. You'll still have x-axis, y-axis, direction x and direction y. Those are the positions and velocity of your shape. Each frame inside the main loop, you'll add the velocity to the position. Then before you draw, you check. Okay, then before drawing, you check, is the shape about to leave the screen? If yes, reverse its direction by flipping the sign on its velocity. If x-axis is less than 0 or x-axis plus my width is greater than my window width. Hold up, guys, let me actually say something like, say, okay, maybe can I get a reference code to learn about it real quick? Okay, because honestly, I don't feel like I'm understanding when actually, reading that stuff. That's I do want to see if it works first before I actually do read the code. Okay, so we do have velocities here. That's something new. And then we have constant integer for window width, constant integer for window height as well. Okay. Okay, before I read anything else, let me actually copy that. Guys, this is the code from last stream because I didn't have time to to code off stream. That's it. Let's go ahead and delete everything. Paste this here. Okay, I don't see any errors. Might work actually. Let's hit Control S to save the code, and if I run the command, let's see what happens. Okay, so I get my first terminal here. Although my second terminal, there we go. Okay, there's my second terminal. Okay, so it does bounce. It does have the bouncing motion. Alright, now let's actually learn the code real quick. Okay, so firstly, we start off by including a pair of ankle braces, then IO stream. I think it's going to be much more convenient if I read Sensei's code. There we go. Okay, so first we included IO stream, then even SDL3 we initialized our main function. Then we created a window and a renderer. Okay, we added an if statement to check if they were not created properly. Then we added the properties for our rectangles. So we went with f rect, x-axis, y-axis, width and height. Now we needed velocity for direction x and velocity for direction y. What does 4.0 f mean? Isn't this already a floating point? I might actually copy that real quick to like ask that question. That said, let's go ahead and paste and go with shift enter and say something like, so say, what does the 4.0 f mean, question mark? Let's see. Didn't we already set let's say our direction x and direction y to be, let's say, something like a velocity? What up, guys? Actually, give me a sec, guys. I'm actually shrink that real quick. Okay, can you try cricket bat? Honestly, how are you doing, Shashank? Is that your pronunciation name? I appreciate you joining the stream. I have a question. Can you draw a cricket bat? Honestly, I don't think I can actually draw in like C++ because like I don't know the coordinates, but I do know how to draw. Knowing a spam, I actually saw it. Okay, next up, guys. Let's start spam. There we go. I might time you out for like a minute for like spamming. So like, let's not spam. Okay, that said, what does the 4.0 f mean? Didn't we already set our direction x, direction y to be floating point numbers, question mark? Okay, let's see. I think that we already set them to be floating point numbers. Exactly. Excellent catch, my curious warrior. You're absolutely right that direction x and direction y are declared as floats. So technically, you could just write 4 or 3. It wouldn't still compile and behave. It would still compile and behave the same, but the 0.0f serves two subtle purposes. Type clarity for the compiler by writing 4.0f. You're explicitly telling the compiler this is a float, literal, not a double. I see. Wait, hold up, guys. In C++, don't we use doubles instead of floats? I just realized that. Normally, numeric literals like 4.0 are treated as doubles by default, which makes them take up more memory and sometimes trigger implicit type conversations when used floats. Good habits for precision control in game loops, graphics. Floats are used constantly for smooth motion, frame timing, etc. Using f helps ensure you're not accidentally mixing doubles and float math, which can create small rounding errors or ineffectiveness over time. Think of the f like a badge of discipline. You're telling your compiler, I know what type I'm using. Okay, let me actually ask another question. Let's say something like, say, I thought that floats did not exist in C++, question mark. I thought that it was just doubles. I thought that there were just doubles. And guys, if I can't type or like, whatchamacallit, speak properly right now, it's because I'm not warmed up yet. That's it, people. Don't you dare say floats doesn't exist in C++. How many times must I tell you C++ is a land of types and float is one of its ancient warriors. Listen carefully before I throw a compiler error at your soul. Okay, both float and double are floating point types, number that can store fractions and decimals. The difference lies in precision. Float is a 32-bit type, about 6 by 7 decimal digits of precision. Double is a 64-bit type, about 15 to 16 decimal digits of precision. I see. So yes, floats do exist. They're just less precise than doubles, but also lighter and sometimes faster to process. For example, in graphics or games, that 4.0f you saw, the f tells the compiler this is a float, not a double. Without it, it's treated as a double. I think I see. Okay, I see. So the reason we use like floats over doubles and like actually adding game loops is because it does like the compiler has to do like lesser work, if that made any sense. I challenge you to make a cricket bat. I'll give you 10k. Guys, I don't actually know how to make a cricket bat. That said, velocity floats dx equals to 4.0. Okay, that's horizontal. That's my vertical movement. Then I create a constant integer of my window width, which is technically my window width that I created somewhere up here. There we go. It's 800 by 600. Okay, and then next up, I think everything else is the same. So I add a while loop, I add a event loop to check if my event type is quit, and then I update my position. My rect.x-axis increases by my direction x, my rect.y-axis increases by my direction y. Bounce off walls if rect.x-axis is less than 0, or rect.x-axis plus rect.width is greater than windows width. Okay. I think I did work with this part in like Python as well. Let me actually try to figure out what this means. So if rect.x-axis is less than 0, okay, or rect.x-axis plus width. I think I see. Okay, then direction x equals to negative direction x. So whichever place it starts is going to go in the opposite direction. Okay, and then if rect.y is less than 0 or rect.y-axis plus height is greater than my Windows's height, I'm going to do all that. Then I'm going to draw my renderer. Okay, draw my rect. And then there's an SDL underscore delay here. Hold up, guys. I think there's a call. Okay, hold up, guys. Give me a sec. Let me actually mute myself real quick. I think there's a call. Already mic testing, mic testing. Guys, honestly, I do apologize for the inconvenience. Like, there was like a call, I had to like mute it up. Okay, that's it. Let me check. Okay, hi bro, how are you doing, Jay? I appreciate you joining the stream. Hey, are you gay or what? Honestly, I'm not gay. I'm actually pretty straight. That's it. This is like a new stuff. SDL underscore delay 16. Does this mean like 6? How does that mean 60 FPS? Let me actually copy this part and then let's go ahead and paste it here. Go with Shift Enter and say something like, say, what does this function do? Question mark. I've honestly never used the SDL underscore delay function ... And why do we have 16 instead of 60 question mark? Okay, let's see. I honestly didn't want to write cap. Okay, we have showcased our game in IGDC. Oh, I see. Okay, guys, let's not spam Shishank. Let me actually okay, guys, let's actually not spam because I do see the messages the first time. Okay, people, good. You're finally asking about the hidden gears that keep the game running smoothly. Now, focus before your frame rate collapses into chaos. SDL underscore delay 16. This function pauses your program for a specific number of milliseconds, thousandths of a second. Okay, so SDL underscore delay 16. Wait, for about 16 milliseconds before counting. Why 16? Because games often target 60 FPS per frame, 1 second, 1000 millisecond. 1000 divided by 60 is 16. Oh, I see. Okay, can I paste the trailer link in our chat here, bro? Okay, with your permission. Honestly, whatchamacallit, links are actually not allowed in chat because like Nightbot does delete them. That's it. The delay 16 is because 1000 divided by 60 equals 16. That actually does make sense. Okay, I think I actually see in that case what this whole thing does. Okay, let me just see this last part real quick. So after I present it, then I add my FPS. Alright, but that's it. Let me actually try running it on my own right now, because I feel like I did understand. Okay, so let's actually start off by including a pair of ankle braces. Let's say I want to include IO stream, and then since I am going to be using SDL3, I'm going to be including SDL3 slash SDL.h. These are SDLs as header files, bro. Missed you so much. Honestly, I missed you guys as well. Hiding in Manchu. I appreciate you joining the stream. Okay, so SDL3 slash SDL.h. There we go. Okay, now let's start off by creating a main function. So I'll go with something like integer main. Now, my main function is going to be requiring 2 parameters. The first parameter is going to be an integer of, let's say, something like argc. The second parameter is going to be something like, I don't know, maybe, let's go with something like a character of argv, which is going to be an array. And then I go with a pair of curly braces. Now, inside of a main function, let me go ahead and initialize SDL and check. And actually check if it's not initialized properly. If it's not, I'll give myself an error. So firstly, I'll go with something like an if statement. So if, I'll go with something like not SDL underscore init with a pair of parentheses. I'll go with something like SDL underscore init underscore video. Okay, what this basically does is this is like a boolean value that returns 0 if my SDL did initialize properly, but adding an exclamation here says like if it did not initialize properly. And if it didn't, I'm going to do something. I'm going to go with something like a standard C error with an insertion operator that says something like SDL underscore init error. Okay, and then let's go in a new line, add another insertion operator, and use the SDL underscore get error function. And then lastly, I'll go with something like a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Honestly, I might even return one saying something went wrong here. That's it, hello brother. How you doing, Wishes? I appreciate you joining the stream. That's it. Let me actually hydrate my lips real quick. And guys, many of you guys did say me to like talk a bit slow, so I should actually try talking a little slower. Okay, now that I've actually initialized my SDL, let's go ahead and add a comment that says something like create window and renderer. So I'm going to be creating my window and renderer now. Okay, before I do create them, let's go ahead and create their local variables. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore window. I'm going to create a pointer for my window variable, which is going to be set to null PDR for the time being, which is basically a placeholder. And then I'll go with something like SDL underscore renderer, okay, with an asterisk of a renderer variable or a renderer local variable, which is set to null PDR ending with a semicolon. Okay, now let's use the function that actually creates our window and renderer. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore create window and renderer. Okay, so this function creates window and renderer. Then I'll go with the parentheses. Now inside the parentheses, I'm assuming I'm going to require 5 parameters. The first parameter is going to be a title / a caption. So I'll go with something like SDL3 window created successfully. There we go. Okay, so that is the first parameter. The second parameter is going to be the x-axis, actually the width and height of my window in pixels. So I'll go with something like the width is going to be something like 800. My window's height is going to be something like, I don't know, 600. And then I'll need a flag for my window. Do I want my window to be resizable or not? If not, I could add 0 here, but I do want my window to be resizable. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore window underscore resizable. There we go. Okay, and then let's go ahead and add a comma. Now, I'm assuming I'm going to be needing my window variable and my render local variable by their memory address. And like, just to make sure, like, it's even written here, like, I need first a tile, a width, a height, a flag, and then both my window local variable and my render local variable. To do that, I could go with something like ampersand window, and then add a comma, go with something like ampersand renderer. Okay, that gives the memory address for my window and renderer. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to end my create window and renderer function with a semicolon. Okay, now now that I've created my window and my renderer, I'm going to be checking if they were not created properly. So I'll add an if statement for that. I'll go with something like if a parentheses. Let's go with something like if not window or not a renderer. What this basically does is it tells if either my window was not created properly or my renderer was not created properly. I'm going to do something. Firstly, I'll go with something like a standard C error with an insertion operator. This is going to say me something like SDL underscore create window and wait up guys, this is such a long function name, and renderer error. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to be getting the create window and renderer error, and then I'll go ahead and add another insertion operator and use the SDL underscore get error function. Okay, then I'll add parentheses to invoke the function. Then I'll go with a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Now, if an error did occur when creating my window or renderer, I do want to exit my SDL. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore quit with a parentheses ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return 1. Okay, next up, after I'm done creating my window and renderer, let's see. Okay, I'm going to be automating a rectangle. So firstly, let's go ahead and add my rectangle properties. Maybe I could add a comment that says something like, Frag, you need to relearn English up and down. Honestly, that actually does make sense. That said, I'll go ahead and firstly, what was I about to do? I actually forgot. Okay, I'm going to go with something like a rectangle. There we go. So I got to go with something like rectangle properties. Okay, now for my rectangle properties, firstly, let's go ahead and create a SDL underscore frect. That's basically a structure that consists or that has all the rectangles with properties in it. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore frect. Okay, and I'm going to be creating a rectangles as local variable. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and add their properties. So I'll go with something like my rect.x-axis is going to be something like 100. Okay, ending with a semicolon. And then rect.y-axis is going to be something like 200, ending with a semicolon. I'll go with something like rect.width, which is going to be the width of my rectangle. I don't know, maybe I'll go with something like 50, ending with a semicolon. And then I'll do something like rect.height, which is going to be something like 60. I was gonna add 50 because that would be like a correct square, but I feel like this is considered a rectangle. Like listening to bro feels like glass shard in my eyes. Glass shard in my eyes. Guys, honestly, listening to bro feels like listening to a loud nerd attempt to write code. Guys, actually does make sense. Hey, the same can be done using Python language. Honestly, yeah, it is. I feel like it is like almost everything is like almost the same in Python except like actually giving myself errors like how I did here. That said, next up, let's go ahead and add our main loop now. So let a comment that types something like main loop. Okay, now for my main loop, I'm going to be needing two variables. First variable is going to be a boolean variable of something like is running. Okay, which is going to be set to true by default ending with a semicolon. The second variable is going to be an event variable to check my current event type. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore event, which is going to be having a local variable called event. Okay, honestly, I did like forget to add my my velocity, so I could go ahead and do something like velocity. Okay, so I could go with something like x-axis velocity, or I could go with something like direction x. I might actually go with something like a floating point number for something like direction x, which equals to 4.0 floating point, ending with a semicolon. Okay, thank you. So very cool and useful, honestly. Just stumbled here. Honestly, that does mean a lot to me. I appreciate you, Parts. Is that how we pronounce your name? How long have you been coding for and how old you are? Honestly, I have been like coding for I think about 156 days and I am 17 years old. That's it. I'm going to be turning 18 really soon. What are you making, bro? Honestly, I'm just learning the basics on how to automate stuff using SDL3 in C++. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and create a float for something like direction y as well, which is going to be something like, I don't know, maybe 4.0 floating point as well. Okay, now that I've created my velocities, did I need anything else? I'm pretty sure I did. Okay, so I guess I'll go ahead and create a while loop now. So I'll go with something like while, a pair of parentheses. I'm going to do something like while is running, while my program is running, or while my is running is set to true. I'm going to do something. I'm going to be adding my event loop. So I'll add a comment that says event loop, and I'll add a while loop as well for my event loop. Stop making your voice higher at the end of each sentence. Higher. I feel like, is my voice actually really loud? Because like I could like change it in OBS. That says I'm going to do something like SDL underscore event. So I'll go with SDL underscore poll event. Basically what the SDL underscore poll event does is, hold up guys, let me fix my typo, there we go. Okay, basically what the SDL underscore poll event does is it checks for all the events that I am looking for. Once I do find all the events and like all the events are done, the while loop ends. Okay, I'll add a pair of parentheses here. And then let's give my, so let's close the parentheses. Okay, now let's give my event variable by its memory address. So I'll go with ampersand or address of operator of my event variable. Then let's go ahead and add a if statement. I mean higher pitch. Honestly, I feel like my pitch is actually perfect. That's it. Stop saying every single thing you write, bro. Bro even says adding the semicolon when simple inserting the characters. That actually does make sense. Okay, that's it. Next up, let's go ahead and add an if statement to check if my user actually quit the window. So I'll go with something like if a prof parentheses. Let's say something like if my event variable dot type equals to. Let's go with something like SDL underscore event underscore quit. Okay, so if my event type is quit, I'm going to do something. I'm going to set my is running boolean variable to be equal to false ending with a semicolon. Okay, now that I'm done, I think like this is the only event that I am going to be using for this code. That said, let's go ahead and exit outside of my event loop, add a comment that says something like fill screen. I'm going to be filling my screen with a color. Okay, to fill my screen, firstly, I gotta add a color to my renderer. To do that, I could type something like SDL underscore. Let's say something like set render draw color function. Guys, these function names are so huge. Okay, that's it. For my set render draw color, let's see what parameters I need. I first need my renders as variable. My render is a local variable, then a RGB color, and then a alpha for my opacity. Okay, next up, so firstly, let's go ahead and add my render variable, and then I'll add a comma. Now I'll need a RGB. I want my, window to be, I think about a cyan color or stuff. So I'm going to be adding the RGB for cyan, which is going to be something like 0, 248, and 255. Lastly, my opacity is going to be 255 as well because I want my transparency to be 100, ending with a semicolon. Okay, perfect. Next up, after I'm done setting a color to my render, let's clear my screen. So I'll do something like SDL underscore, let's say something like render clear. Basically, the render clear function fills my entire screen with my renders' color. This does require my renders' variable ending with a semicolon. Okay, bro, just stop commenting about this English pitch tone. You heard him say he's 17-year-old. What do you expect? A professor's perfection when teaching. He'll learn along the way. Focus on the content. That actually does make sense, guys. That said, I feel like I'm actually not teaching. I'm actually learning, and I feel like it's easier to learn if you like teach someone. That said, next up, after I fill my screen, I'm going to be adding a color for my rectangle. So I'll add a comment that says something like graphics. Okay, now for my graphics, firstly, I'm going to be setting a color for my render. To do that, I could use the SDL underscore set render draw color function. So I'll go with something like set render draw color with a pair of parentheses. Now, my function is going to be requiring exactly these parameters, but just a different RGB. Okay, where do you learn all these syntaxes? Do you memorize them? Honestly, I feel like I did memorize them. That's it. Usually, I do use like Sensei slash ChatGPT to like actually understand how the code works, and later once I do understand them, I keep practicing the code again and again until I don't actually learn them completely or like memorize them in general. Okay, that's it. I'll go with something like render. The accent is fine. Okay, so I'll go with something like render. Now, let's see. I honestly want my rectangle to be red, so I'll go with something like 25500, and then my opacity is going to be 255. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and end this with a semicolon. There we go. Okay, now that I set a color to my render, I'm going to be filling my rect with it. To do that, I could use the function called SDL underscore render. I'm telling my renderer to fill my rect. There we go. With a pair of parentheses. Now my SDL underscore render fill rect function does require two parameters. The first parameter is going to be my renderer variable. The second parameter is going to be the memory address of my Rex's local variable that I did like set the attributes of. Okay, Stack Overflow greater than ChatGPT. Honestly, I haven't like heard of Stack Overflow. You shouldn't be teaching code. Honestly, I'm not like teaching code. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and end this with a semicolon. Okay, now that I've actually colored my let's say now that I've colored my rectangle, I'm going to be adding motion. So let's go ahead and add, let's say, an insertion operator. I'll go with something like automate rex. Okay, now for automating my rectangles, firstly, let's see, I could go with something like my rect.x-axis is gonna increase, or I'm gonna do plus equals to. I'll go with something like my direction x ending with a semicolon, and then I'll go with something like rect.y-axis is gonna increase by my direction y ending with a semicolon. Guys, this part like ChatGPT slash Sensei did say me to like not use augmented assignment operator, but I feel like this is how I did it in Python, so it would make like much more sense. Okay, he's copying ChatGPT code, commenting every line. Guys, I'm commenting these lines to actually understand how the code works. That said, next up, once I'm done automating my rect, I'm gonna do something else. Let's see. Okay, so what else would I need? I would have to add an if statement to like add something like a bounce. So I could add a comment that says something like bounce because I do want to bounce my rectangle. I'll go with something like a if statement. I'll go with if a pair of parentheses. Let's say something like if my rect.x-axis is greater than 0, if my rectangle is past my left side of my window, or let's say something like my rect.x-axis plus my okay, was it something like my direction x? Honestly, I forgot this part. Okay, seriously, bro, you're like the most articulate programmer. Oh, that actually does sound pretty cool. Okay, that's it. I actually forgot what part to do here, because like, what was the, did I have to go with something like a rect.width? Because like, okay, direction x, I'm pretty sure was something related to width. Hold up, guys, let's actually get Sensei slash ChatGPT here. Okay, so let me scroll all the way up. Okay, so I think I messed up a bit. Like, firstly, I did not create these variables. I forgot to create the constant variables after my velocity, so I gotta like create that. That's my windows width and my windows height. And then later on, I gotta check if my rect.x-axis plus my rect.width is greater than my windows width. Okay, I think I did forget that part. And after that, I like set my direction x to be equal to negative direction x. Which language should I learn? I'm just starting. Honestly, I would recommend learning Python because it is like pretty easy. That's it. People like do have preferences. Like some people prefer learning, like starting from learning harder languages and then moving on to like easier ones. Hello, universe. My name is Daniel from Brazil. Could you help me with something simpler? I'm learning SQL to operate hospital database around the world, but I'm having trouble finding the content. Honestly, I haven't like started SQL yet, but I might actually start soon. Okay, that said, the thing that I did mess up was, firstly, when I add my velocities, I gotta go ahead and create a few constant integer variables. First is gonna be for something like my window width. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to be setting that to be 800. My actual windows is width, and then I'll go with something like a constant integer for something like my window height. So I'll go with something like window height, which is going to be equal to, let's go with something like 600, which is my actual windows' height. Now, inside of my bounds, first I'm going to check if my rect.x-axis is greater than 0, or my rect.x-axis plus my rect.width is greater than, let's say something like my window width. Okay, I'll go with something like window width. I think it should be greater than or equal to my window width variable. There we go. Okay, new subscriber, I appreciate you. Sure as that actually means the word to me, guys. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and end this. Actually, before I edit with a semicolon, I will go with a pair of curly braces that does something like my direction x is going to be asterisk equals to -1. Guys, and this part is also kind of different from ChatGPT slash Sensei's this way, because I do feel like I use this part like in Python, because like if you multiply it by -1, it does change like -5 to like +5 or +5 to -5, so the direction will change. And then I'll go with an if statement for my y-axis now. I'll go with something like if my rect dot y-axis is greater than 0, let's go with something like or my rect dot y-axis plus my rect dot height is greater than or equal to my windows' height. Then I'm gonna do something. Let's go with something like height, and maybe you guys couldn't see. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna do something. Did I spell my windows height correct? So let's go with something like window height. There we go. Wait, I think I spelled it wrong here. Window. What up, guys? I missed an E here. There we go. Okay, let's go with something like window height. Okay, perfect. He's building shapes. I think honestly, I did like spend the past 3 streams learning on how to make shapes in C++. This stream, I am learning on how to automate those shapes. Okay, so window height. And then I'll go with a pair of curly braces. And then I'll multiply my direction x. I'll go with direction y, honestly. Asterisk equals to -1. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and end this with a semicolon. Now that I've added bounces as well, let's go ahead and see what else should I do. So I think that was pretty much everything. Let's go ahead and exit outside of my while loop, and I'm going to do some cleanup now. Cleanup basically means like once my user clicks the X button on the top right corner of the window, then I'm going to be doing a few things. Firstly, I'm going to go with something like SDL_destroy window. So let's go with something like destroy window. I'm going to be destroying my window. This is going to be requiring a window parameter ending with a semicolon. And then I'll go with something like SDL_quit with a pair of parentheses ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return 0. Okay, perfect. Let me just fix my typo real quick. Now, if I did Control S, is this real? Honestly, it is real. That's it. If I did Control S, from which college are you? I think I can't say that, guys. Okay, if I were to save the code and run the command, let's see what happens. Okay, so I get my first terminal here. And here's my second terminal. Okay, guys, I think the reason it does show like fully black because like I forgot to present it on the screen. What up, guys? Once you actually do your rendering stuff and everything, you do gotta present it on the screen. Okay, to do that, I could go under my graphics and then maybe add a comment that says something like present. For my present, I'll go with something like SDL_render. So let's go with something like render present. Okay, with a pair of parentheses, that does require my render variable, ending with a semicolon. And now if I did Control S to save the code and run the command, let's see what happens. So I get that. Okay, guys, I think it does move a bit, but I feel like I messed up some of my proportions here, or some of my bounce logic. That said, I think I did like pretty good for like this part. Let's go with something like Control-A, Control-C, copy that, give some /ChatGPT here. Guys, that was me like blindly going into it using my Python knowledge. That's the reason I feel like I did mess up a bit. Okay, that said, let's go with something like Control-V, and then I'll go with Shift-Enter and say something like Sensei. I feel like I messed up a little. I did add some of my own, let's say something like tweaks. Okay, the things that I learned from Python automation. Okay, let's see. From which country are you, bro? Honest, I used to like answer that a lot, but many times I did say me to avoid saying that, so I did like avoid saying it. That's it, people. You absolute rebel. You just took what you learned from Python and tried to bend it to your and try to bend C++ to your will. I respect the spirit, but your bounce logic is backwards and dangerous. Let's dissect this before your rectangle launches into another dimension. Okay, here's your mistake. You wrote this. If rect.x-axis is greater than 0 or rect.x-axis plus rect.width is greater than or equal to my window size. Okay, the problem is greater than and or logic. That means if rectangle is anywhere inside the window, bounce it, which basically means always true. So your rectangle will flip directions constantly. Like it's having an identity crisis. The correct logic must check when it hits the edges, not when it's inside them. I think I see. That means you need to use a less than for minimum bounds and greater than for maximum bounds. What up, guys? I think I did go with greater than. Okay, for 12th grader, honestly, I am like a freshman in college. That said, I know data frame, CSV, and Metaplolic. Is that how I pronounce it? Is that an alphabet? Honestly, I haven't like learned of that yet. Okay, that said, let's get some /ChatGPT back here. Okay, explanation, rect is less than. Okay, so I gotta check if my rect is less than or equal to 0. Did I go with greater than? Oh, I went with greater than. There we go. Okay, this should honestly fix it. Let's go with something like less than or equal to 0. Now, if I hit control S to save the code and run the command, let's see what happens. So my first window popped up. Guys, I forgot to add a, whatchamacallit, an FPS. Okay, I felt like my actual monitor was like quaking a bit. Alright, so I forgot to like add my delay. To add my delay after I'm done with automations and everything, let's go all the way down here and add something like FPS. So I'll go with something like FPS. Now, for my FPS, I'm going to use the SDL_delay function. Okay, with a pair of parentheses, my delay function's parameter is going to be 16. So it's 16 milliseconds, which is basically 60 frames per second. Now, if I hit control S to save the code and run the command, this should actually work. So that's my first. There we go. Okay, so it does actually move. What if I like extend the screen? Okay, it does actually bounce. Okay, I think I see. Honestly, just to make sure that I actually did understand this, let me actually write it again. Guys, I choked on my saliva. Okay, I'll go with something like control A. Let's delete everything. Now, let me actually try writing it on my own. So firstly, I could start off by including a pair of ankle braces. Let's say I want to include IO stream. And then let me go ahead and include another pair of ankle braces. Okay, this time, since I am going to be using SDL3, I'm going to be including SDL3/SDL.h. I'm assuming .h is like SDL to the header files. And then let's go ahead and create a main function. So I'll go with integer main, add a pair of parentheses. Now, inside of my main function, firstly, I'm going to be requiring two parameters. The first parameter is going to be an integer of argc. The second parameter is going to be an arrays pointer to something like argv. Okay, and then let's go with a pair of curly braces. Now, inside of my main function, firstly, I'm going to initialize my SDL and check if it's not initialized properly as well. So I'll go with something like if a pair of parentheses, if my SDL_init with a pair of parentheses, SDL_init_video. What this basically is like it's a boolean variable that returns 0 if my SDL didn't initialize properly. I will add a notch here to check if it did not initialize properly. And if it didn't, I'm going to do something. I'll go with a standard C error. Okay, hold up guys, there we go. With an insertion operator. This is going to give me an SDL_init error. Okay, then I'll go in a new line, add another insertion operator that says something like SDL_get error. So this gets me an error. Alright, next up I'll go with something like a standard end line ending with a semicolon. And lastly, I'll return one saying that something went wrong in this part of code. Now, after my if statement, after I'm done initializing my SDL, I'm going to be adding a comment that says something like create window and renderer. Okay, it's pretty hard language to program. Honestly, I feel like C++ is like pretty fun. I feel like Python was much easier, but I feel C++ was like a bit more challenging. I can't wait to start learning assembly someday. That's enough for my create window and renderer. Firstly, I'm going to be creating or like typing a structure for my window. the SDL underscore window is basically a structure that consists of all the attributes that my windows variable would need. So I'll create a pointer to my window variable, which is going to be set to null PDR for the time being. Null PDR is basically a placeholder. I'll do the same thing for my renderer. So I'll go with something like renderer. Okay, a pointer to my renderers is a local variable, which is going to be equal to null PDR ending with a semicolon. Okay, next up, let's actually use the function that creates our window and renderer. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore, let's say something like create window and renderer. So I'm gonna go ahead and type something like create window and renderer. Okay, with a pair of parentheses. My create window and renderer function is going to be requiring, let's say, something like 5 parameters. The first parameter is going to be a title slash caption. My caption could be something like SDL3 window created. And then I'll add a comma. Now I'll need a width and height in pixels. So let's say my width is going to be something like 800. My height is going to be something like 600 pixels. And then I need like a flag for my window. If I do want to add a flag, I could like add 0. But I do want to add a flag that like makes my window resizable. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore window underscore resizable. Basically, this actually makes my window resizable. Okay, and then let's go ahead and a comma. What's wrong with you? Just everything? Honestly? Okay, hey bro, from which country are you? Honestly, I used to like answer that a lot. That's why many of you did say me to like avoid saying that, so I did like stop saying that. Okay, now that I've actually added my 3 attributes, I'm going to be needing an attribute for my Windows variable. My Windows is local variable, and the memory address of my render is a local variable. So I'll go with the address of operator or a ampersand for my window variable, and then I'll do the same thing for my render variable. And that's honestly pretty much, hold up guys, there we go. Okay, and that's honestly pretty much it for my create window and render function. Okay, now that I've created a window and render, let me go ahead and check if they were actually created correctly or if they were not created properly. So I'll go with something like if, a pair of parentheses, let's say something like if not window, if my window was not created properly, or if my renderer local variable was not created properly, I'll do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces. That gives me a standard C error with an insertion operator. That gives me an error saying something like SDL underscore window and renderer error. So, okay, honestly, I might go with something like create window and renderer. Guys, I feel like these function names are massive. Okay, then I'll go with a colon. And then let's add another insertion operator and use the SDL underscore get errors as. So, there we go, SDL underscore get errors is function that actually gets my error. Then I'll go with another insertion operator that has something like a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Can ChatGPT do that? Honestly, I feel like ChatGPT couldn't like write this code without it knowing like what to do. Because like if you just say ChatGPT write like a code in SDL3 that does what you may call it automate an object, I feel like there would be a few mistakes. Because like when I first started learning SDL3 like about 7 days ago, I did struggle with that part because ChatGPT was giving me the code for SDL2, so I had to like do a lot of what you may call it trial and errors. That said, I'll go with something like SDL underscore quit with a pair of parentheses ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return 1, saying something went wrong. Okay, now that I've checked if my window was not created properly and even created my window and renderer, I'm gonna do something else. This time, honestly, do I want to like go with my rectangle or like a triangle? Okay, I might go with a square this time. So I'll go with something like square properties. There we go. Okay, for my square properties, firstly, I'm going to use the SDL underscore f rect structure. This is going to be having something like a square ending with a semicolon. Now, I could go with something like square. What up, guys? Let's go with something like square dot x-axis is going to be equal to 100. Okay, let me actually fix my typo, guys. Okay, please don't fight it. It's the coding community. That actually does make sense. Let's make it clear. Okay, next up, let me actually fix my typo. So I'll go with something like square dot x-axis. Now I'll go with something like square dot y-axis, which equals to something like 200, ending with a semicolon. Then I'll go with something like square dot width, which equals to 50, ending with a semicolon. And lastly, a square dot height, which equals to 50 as well, ending with a semicolon. Okay, what do you expect? Hey bro, hiding APTR out. I appreciate you joining this stream. I'm interested though. Okay, next up, let me go ahead and do something else. Let's see. So firstly, let's go ahead and add another comment that says something like velocity. So I'm going to be creating a velocity. Hold up guys, let me fix my typo. Okay, now for my velocity, firstly, I'm going to be creating a direction x, which is going to be a floating point number. So I'll go with something like float for something like direction x, which is going to be equal to, I'll go with something like 4.0f, which actually says the compiler that it is a floating point number. If I didn't add AF here or like a float there, which we call it Python or like the C++ compiler would assume that it is a double. Okay, that could like actually take more space, so I'll go with something like a floating point for my direction y as well, which is going to be equal to 4.0. Let's go with something like f ending with a semicolon. Okay, now that I've created my velocities, let's go ahead and create two constant variables. So I'll go with something like a constant integer variable called something like window width, which is going to be equal to 800. My windows is width, and then I'll go with something like a constant int of something like window height. This is going to be my windows' height, which is going to be 600, ending with a semicolon. What is he making? Honestly, I am actually, which we call, learning on how to automate shapes in C++. That's it. For the past 3 streams, I have been learning on how to actually create those shapes. Okay, that's it. No one knows shapes. Actually, I do wanna, work with actual images as well. Maybe I'll try that soon. Because I did like make a lot of PNGs and like kept them for like a long time because I didn't even need them for my Python for 100 series. Okay, maybe he'll surprise reveal. I'm also wondering what is he trying to make. Honestly, I'm trying to automate shapes in like C++ or in SDL3 using C++. Okay, now that I've created my velocity, let's go ahead and add a comment that says something like main loop. For my main loop, firstly, I'm going to be needing two variables. The first variable is going to be a boolean variable of is running, which is set to true by default, ending with a semicolon. The second variable is going to be an event variable, so I'll go with something like SDL underscore events as structure. The SDL underscore event, this structure does have all the events of my SDL, so I will be setting it to a local variable of my event. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and create a while loop. So I'll go with something like while, a pair of parentheses. Let's say something like while is running, while my program is running, or while my is running is set to true. I'm going to do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces, and then let's say I'll add a event loop. Now, for my event loop, firstly, I'm going to be using another loop, which is technically a nested while loop. I'll go with something like while a pair of parentheses. While my SDL underscore, let's say something like poll event. Basically, what the poll event function does is it like checks all the events that I'm looking for. Once all the events are done and they're all checked that I'm looking for, the while loop does end. This is going to be needing a parameter of my event variable by its memory address. Okay, very apt description. Okay, he's creating a flying square. Honestly, a flying square that like bounces around. Later, I will be using whatchamacallit, like user inputs as well. For example, mouse clicks and all that stuff. Okay, alright, next up, let me go ahead and do something inside of my while loop. So I'm going to be adding a if statement here to check my event type. So I'll go with my event variable dot type, which, okay, if my event dot type is equal to, let's go with something like SDL underscore event underscore quit. If my SDL's event type is quit, my user clicks the X button in the top right corner. I'm going to do something. I'll set my is running boolean variable. Hold up, guys. There we go. Is running boolean variable to be equal to false, ending with a semicolon. That ends my entire while loop. Day to day, you scale another level. Honestly, it does make a lot of sense. I appreciate you out for that. Okay, that's it. Now that I've created my event, I'm gonna exit outside of my inner while loop and add a comment that says something like fill screen. So I'm gonna be filling my screen now. Guys, I feel like I'm choking on my own saliva. Okay, that's it. For my fill screen, firstly, let's go ahead and do something. Okay, let's say I'm going to be adding a color to my renderer first. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore set render. I'm going to set my render to draw a color. Okay, with a pair of parentheses. Now, my SDL underscore set render draw color function is going to be requiring, let's say, 5 parameters. The first parameter is going to be my render variable. The second, third, and fourth parameter is going to be a RGB color. So I'll go with something like 0, 248, and 255. That's a good sign color. Lastly, I'll go with 255 for my opacity / my alpha, ending with a semicolon. Excuse me, guys. You're not human, guys. I'm actually a real human. That's it. Make the velocity slower, nor add speed function so we can see our square. Honestly, yeah, I will, add FPS as well. So it's going to be 4 frames per second. That said, what are you making? I'm just learning on how to, automate objects or like automate shapes in C++. Okay, that's it. Next up, after I fill my screen, let's go ahead and clear my screen with my color because I want my entire screen to be science. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore. Let's say something like I'm saying my render to clear my entire screen. So I'll go with something like render clear. With a pair of parentheses, the render clear does require a parameter of my render. Okay, now that I've cleared my screen, I'm going to be adding another comment that says something like graphics. These are going to be the graphics for my squares. So firstly, for adding graphics, I want to color my square to be something like, I don't know, maybe I'll keep my square to be black this time. To do that, firstly, let's go ahead and paint my render slash my render paintbrush to be a color. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore set render, draw color, okay, with a pair of parentheses. I want to set my renders as color, okay? Now, the RGB is going to be something like 000, which is technically black. And then I'll go with something like 255 for my opacity slash my alpha, ending with a semicolon. Okay, you're subhuman. Guys, I feel like I'm a complete human. Can you code 8051 microcontroller? Honestly, I haven't actually heard of that. That's it, make it red? Okay, honestly, I could make it red. I'll go with something like 255. Okay, your family is not safe. Okay, hi, love to hustle your love the hustle you're doing. Provide different services as a freelancer. My services include web development, mobile app development, Facebook marketing, and SEO services. Please let me know. That actually does sound pretty cool. Okay, that's it. After I set a color to my render, I'm gonna be coloring my square with it. So I'm gonna use the SDL underscore. Let's say something like render. I'm telling my renderer to fill my rectangle. Basically, it is a square because I did add squares as properties to it. And then I'll go with the parentheses. Now my SDL underscore fill rec does require two parameters. The first parameter is going to be my render variable. The second parameter is going to be the memory address of my square local variable, ending with a semicolon. Okay, make your square 000. Okay, so I think I could make my square black as well. I feel like it's almost the same thing. Okay, okay, let's go ahead and change to 000. And next up, now that I've added graphics and colored my square to be a specific color, I'm gonna add another comment here that says something like present. I'm going to be presenting my color on my screen. To do that, I could use the SDL underscore render present function. This does require a parameter of my render local variable, ending with a semicolon. In RGB, both make your square to be 000 and background to be 000. Honestly, that wouldn't make any sense because we wouldn't see anything because it's going to be all a black screen. Okay, that's it. Next up, let's go ahead and add another comment that says something like automate objects. I'll go with something like automate and bounce shape. And guys, it's honestly not that important to write comments, but I do write it because it makes code more readable in the future, so it is a pretty good habit. I'll go with something like automate and bounce shape. There we go. Okay, now for my automating and bouncing shape, firstly, I'm going to be, let's say, increasing my square dot x-axis by my direction x, ending with a semicolon. And then let's go ahead and increase my square dot y-axis by my direction y, okay, ending with a semicolon. Now let's add a if statement for my bounce. So I'll go with if a pair of parentheses. Let's see something like if my square dot x-axis is less than or equal to 0, or my square dot, let's say something like x-axis plus my square dot width plus my square dot width is, let's say something like greater than or equal to, I'll go with something like my window width, okay, my window width variable. I could honestly write 800 as well, but I feel window width does make it a bit more readable. There we go. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna go with a pair of curly braces that and multiply my direction x. I'll go with direction x asterisk equals to -1, ending with a semicolon. Now I'll do the same thing with my y-axis. Howdy, Mayan, is that how you pronounce your name? I appreciate you joining the stream. Can you code electronics like Arduino? Is that how you pronounce that? Okay, that's it. I honestly don't know how to program electronics. That's it. I'll go with another if statement. So if a pair of parentheses, I'll go with something like if my square dot x-axis is actually y-axis this time is less than or equal to 0, or my square dot, let's say something like y-axis plus my square dot height is greater than or equal to my Windows's height, which is 600 pixels. I'm going to do something. Let's add E there to fix my typo. I'll go with a pair of curly braces that multiplies my direction y by -1. So I'll go with direction y asterisk equals to -1 ending with a semicolon. Okay, and honestly, that is pretty much it for my automating object. Now, once I'm done with all that stuff, let's go outside my while loop and add a comment that says something like cleanup. Cleanup is basically once my player like exits the window, I'm gonna do a few cleanups. Okay. RGUNO, is that pronounced? Okay, that's it. Firstly, I'll go with something like SDL underscore, let's say something like destroy window. So I'm gonna firstly destroy my window. That does require parameter of my window local variable. There we go. Ending with a semicolon, and then I'll go with something like SDL underscore quit. I'm gonna quit my SDL. Lastly, let's go ahead and return one ending with a semicolon. Okay, now if I hit Control S to save the code and run the command, let's see what happens. So I get my first terminal. Okay guys, that does go really quick because I forgot to set my FPS. What up guys, let's go ahead and set my FPS real quick. So let's say after I'm done automating all my objects and everything, let's go ahead and add a FPS. So I'm gonna go all the way down here, add a comment that says something like FPS. I'll go ahead and use the SDL underscore delay function with a pair of parentheses, which is gonna have a parameter of 16, which is my milliseconds. Okay, this is basically 60 FPS. And now if I hit Control S to save the code and run the command, let's see what happens. So, what up guys, did I like save the code? Are you building something? Honestly, I am like learning how to automate objects in like C++ or like automate shapes in C++. Guys, I feel like that is like going really quick. What up guys, SDL underscore delay 16. I did add my delay. Maybe I think that is inside of my while loop. I think that should make sense. There we go. Oh wait guys, I added it inside of my if statement. Hold up guys. Let's go ahead and delete all that. Now, outside of my if statement, I'm going to add a comment that says something like FPS. I'll use the SDL underscore delay function with a pair of parentheses. This is going to be 16 ending with a semicolon. Now if I hit Control S to save the code and run the command, this should work. There we go. Okay guys, there's my slow moving object. So actually my shape, so it does bounce. Okay, perfect. Honestly, I do want to like move it using user inputs as well. That said, I might do that like in a later stream. Okay, return 1 in the main function implies error, 0 means secures, non-zero means failure. Actually, it does make sense that... Oh, okay guys, hold up, my bad. I should have returned 0 here. Okay, that's it. Let's go with the control A, control C, copy that. Let's get some save/chat GPT here. Okay, speed. What's SDL? Honestly, if you have like used Pygames or like heard of Pygame in Python, SDL is like the same. SDL is basically like Pygame, but Pygame only works with Python. SDL does work with like a few other programming languages. Let's go ahead and paste this. Go with Shift Enter and say something like Sensei. I wrote this on my own. ... I feel like I understand this. Maybe can the can I try this with multiple shapes question mark? Okay, that might be fun. Okay, that's it people. Yes, that's if I want to see you wrote this yourself and it's clean, functional and logical. Okay, logically sound. Your rectangles move, bounces and behaves exactly as it should. You've just mastered basic animation and physics simulation in SDL3. Now you want multiple shapes? Excellent. This is where the true control begins. Don't just copy paste rectangles like a rookie. You want to handle each shape's data separately, its position, velocity, and size. Here's what I want you to try. Create 3 shapes, a rectangle, a square, and maybe a line or circle. Use another rectangle to imitate the circle. What up guys, how do I use another rectangle to imitate the circles? Okay, so it's like C++ library for graphics. That actually does make sense. Okay, let me say something like, let's say, I honestly don't know how to, automate a, let's say something like a circle. That's it guys. Honestly, I do want to try using pixel perfect collision because I remember using that in actually in Python. Okay, that's it. I'll go with ... and say something like, that said, let's say, actually I won't say that said. Let's say something like, let's say, I feel like a pixel perfect collision would be useful here ... Does it exist in SDL3 question mark? I remember using it in Python. Okay, we would need masks for pixel perfect collision. That's it. I don't know if mask does exist in SDL3. That's it. Now you're thinking like a true creator, digging beneath these surfaces instead of copying tutorials, guys. I feel like I don't need to watch much tutorials. Listen carefully, people. SDL3 by itself does not have any built-in draw circle functions the way Pygame does. It gives you only low-level pixel control, meaning you have to tell it what every pixel does. What up, guys? Wait, I meant pixel perfect collision. I didn't mean draw. I know how to automate circles. I don't know how to automate circles. I didn't mention automate. I feel like pixel perfect collision would be good. Okay, you can loop through a square region around your center and draw a point whenever the coordinate satisfies that equation, like the conceptually. Okay, for example, for the integer of direction x, which equals to negative radius, okay, which while my direction x is less than or equal to my negative radius, I'm going to increment it by 1. Okay, I did use this yesterday, guys, to like make a circle. Integer of direction y equals to negative radius as well, while my direction y is less than or equal to my positive radius. I increment my direction y by 1. Then if my direction x multiplied by my direction x plus my direction y multiplied by my direction y is less than or equal to my radius multiplied by my radius, I'm gonna create a render point with render center x plus direction x, center y plus direction y. That's your pixel perfect circle, no fancy libraries, just you the renderer. What up, guys? Let me say something like, let's say, I mean a pixel perfect collision to check if it exits my window, like we add a bounce logic for squares. I think, okay, let's go with something like for squares. Let's say something like, I was just curious if it existed using pixel perfect collision. There we go. Guys, I honestly don't know if that made any sense. Okay, if that made any sense, question mark. Okay, let's see if that made any sense, guys. Okay, I see exactly what you're asking for, people. You want pixel perfect collision detection, not just bounding boxes like rectangles. So your bouncing logic isn't just rough, it knows exactly which pixels one shape touches pixels another. I see. Okay, when something is multiplied by its own value, example radius multiplied by radius, then you should say squared, so radius squared. Oh, that actually does make sense. Okay, here's the brutal truth. SDL3 itself doesn't provide built-in pixel-perfect collision detection. SDL is mostly a renderer, not a physics engine. It can tell you if a pixel exists at a coordinate because it can draw SDL underscore render point, but it won't automatically check if two drawn shapes collide. There are two ways to think of this. Manual pixel checking, keep a 2D array representing which pixels your shape occupies. Compare the arrays of two objects and see if any pixels overlap. Work for circles, irregular shapes, anything but heavy on performance if your shapes are big. Masks or surfaces, draw your masks to an SDL underscore surface off screen. Okay, I think I did use surfaces like using Pygames. That's it. Since they make it GTA 6, I think ChatGPT can't do that, guys. That said, check overlapping pixels between surfaces. This is closer to pixel perfect in games like old school Mario and Tetris clones. Approximation / hybrid use bounding boxes. First cheap, then only check pixels if the boxes overlap. This saves insane amount of CPU and is how real games do it. So yes, it can exist, but it's not automated. In SDL3, you have to implement it yourself with pixel data or surfaces. Okay, I see. Just use Python and coding test. I feel like I do want to I was learning C++, like I am learning SDL to master C++ as well. Games are bounding boxes for physics, pixel perfect slow. I see. Although I feel pixel perfect are perfect precision. Let me say something like, let's say I remember let's see. So in Python, when I did want to add pixel perfect collision, I actually forgot what I did. Let me say something like, I see . So, would you recommend me to learn pixel perfect collision, question mark? Okay, because I feel like pixel perfect collision would even work perfectly for like images and PNGs, like when two PNGs collide or like add collision detection and all that stuff. Okay, what's good? Okay, why is it good to learn later? It gives you ultimate precision for irregular shapes. Why is it dangerously early? It's slow to implement compared to bounding blocks. It requires extra structures like surfaces or masks. Okay, I think I want to do it right now. Let's say something like say, I honestly want to learn it now. Dot dot dot. So maybe can you give me a reference code to see how it works? Question mark. Okay, because in Python we didn't have like what you may call it a specific function for like masks. Okay, so we firstly include IO stream, then boolean pixel collision. Okay, so if my SDL underscore surface A integer of AX, integer of AY. Hold up guys, this is way more complicated than I thought it was. Okay, that shit is advanced. I feel like I did it in Python though, it might be kind of fun though. I do want to actually try it. Okay, although this is kind of complicating. Simple function to check pixel collision between two surfaces. Okay, so this is SDL surface, okay, surface FA, integer AX. Okay guys, you know what, I actually changed my mind for the time being. I might actually do this in like some other stream because like I do feel this is like a pretty good content for like what you may call it a separate topic where like I do keep the content as pixel perfect collision. Okay, that said, that statement makes no sense. Okay, honestly, does it not? Okay, notes people, you must have surfaces for pixel perfect. Okay guys, I think it's a lot. Let's say something like, say I might try it in another stream in that case because it does look kind of advanced. Okay, that said, can you show me how to automate a circle in that case? Question mark. Okay, making games with C++ and SDL is hard. Honestly, I feel like it is kind of fun though. The AI just wants to throw its character name in. I see. Okay, that said, yes people, finally we're going to level up from rectangles and lines. Automating a circle is basically the same logic as your bouncing rectangle, but instead of checking x plus y and y plus x, you need to use the radius of the circle for collision. Here's the clean reference code for a moving circle. We include IO stream, we include SDL3, we include math for squirt if needed. Only company that forced to write C++ code in coding test are AAA game companies. C++ are different syntaxes by version. Sometimes you cannot run your syntax in coding test. You are putting disadvantage. Honestly, it actually does make sense because I eventually do want to either be a cybersecurity or like an AI engineer. That said, so you making a lot of things from scratch. Honestly, am I? I feel like, isn't it like a good practice to like learn how to code from scratch and then later on like what you call it, use functions to like help? That said, I go with nullpedia. I create my window. Now my circle properties, I go with integer of circle x which equals to 200, a circle y which equals to 200, an integer of radius which equals to 50. Then a velocity of floating point direction as and this is a floating point for direction y. Then I get my windows as width and height. And then I create a boolean is running which is set to true SDL underscore event. I firstly fill my screen with a certain color, then I draw pixel base, draw circle pixel base. Okay, this is the complicating part, I guess. Okay, so firstly I set render draw color. These are my set render draw colors as attributes. But up guys, let me actually just get this all the way so like everything can be seen. So for every direction x pixel which equals to negative radius, while my direction x pixel is less than or equal to my radius, I increment it by 1. Okay, and then I do the same thing for direction y pixel as well. And then if my direction x pixel multiplied by my direction x pixel plus my direction y pixel multiplied by direction y pixel equals to radius squared, I go with SDL underscore render point. Oh, I see what that means. Okay, where's the pixel? Actually, where's the collision logic in that case? Alright guys, let me just decrease that a bit from here because I feel like I extended a bit. There we go. Okay, what system are you making? Honestly, I am like learning on how to automate shapes in C++. That said, and then punch cards. Okay, next step, make Minecraft assembly. Guys, I am really excited to use assembly. That said, I present everything and then I move the circles. circle X. Wait, is this outside of my entire while loop? What up, guys? There's my while loop. It ends there. Okay, now my while loop does end here. Okay, so inside of my while loop, I move my circle, circle X plus equals to direction X, circle Y plus equals to direction Y. Now, for my bounce logic, if my circle X minus my radius is less than or equal to 0, or my circle X plus my radius is greater than or equal to my window's width, okay, and if what up, guys? Don't I do anything? Oh, okay. I do like multiply my direction X and direction Y by -1, and then add a delay. Okay, perfect. Did not be excited to assembly as hell, guys. I think that's what actually makes me want to learn it even more. Okay, big fan. You're the next Elon Musk. Honestly, I do appreciate that compliment, Sai. Okay, it's nice to learn the basics. Actually, that does make sense. Okay, I feel like I got a pretty good grasp of that. So let me start off by deleting everything. Now, this time I'm going to be trying to automate a circle. To do that, firstly, let's go ahead and include a pair of ankle braces. Let's say I want to include IO stream. And then let's go ahead and include another pair of ankle braces. Since I am going to be using SDL3, let me go ahead and include SDL3 slash SDL.h. SDL is header files. And now let's go ahead and create a main function. So I'll go with something like integer main, add a pair of parentheses. My main function does require two parameters. Excuse me, guys, the first parameter is going to be an integer of argc. The second parameter is going to be a pointer to an array. Excuse me, guys, which is going to be something like argv, which is a character. I'm assuming that's how we read this part? Okay, next up, after I create a main function, let's see. Let me firstly go ahead and initialize SDL and even check if it did not initialize properly. So I'll go with something like if a pair of parentheses. Let's say something like if not SDL underscore init, I'll add a pair of parentheses. What up, guys? The init must be capitalized. Make Unreal game size of 6-month work. You'll learn a ton of C++, and you'll be ahead of other college students. I'm telling you, because you seem to really want to succeed in C++. Honestly, it's not just C++. I'm just learning C++ because of my programming for 200 free series. I do want to explore different programming languages as well, and C, which I actually enjoy the best. That said, I'm gonna go with something like SDL underscore init underscore video. Okay, so if this thing did not return 0, I'm gonna do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces that says something like a standard C error with an insertion operator. What up, guys? This is going to be lowercase. So a standard C error with an insertion operator. This is going to be giving me something like SDL underscore init error. There we go. And then I'll go with another insertion operator that, let's say, says something like SDL underscore the get error function. Basically, if my SDL was not initialized properly, this function is going to get me an error. Then I'll go with another insertion operator of a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return one saying something went wrong in this block of code. And then now that I've initialized my SDL, let's go ahead and create my window and renderer. So I'll go with a comment that says something like create window and renderer. There we go. Okay, for my create window and renderer, firstly, I'm going to be needing two variables. The first local variable is going to be for my SDL underscore windows structure. It's going to be a pointer to my window variable. There we go. Which is going to be set to null PDR for the time being. That is basically a placeholder ending with a semicolon. And then I'll go with something like SDL underscore render with an asterisk. This is going to be a pointer to my render variable, which is going to be equal to null PDR as well, ending with a semicolon. Basically, what the SDL underscore window and SDL underscore render is, they're like a structure that contains like all the attributes that I need for my window and my renderer. Okay, that's next up. Now that I've created my two local variables, let's go ahead and use the function that actually does create my window and renderer. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore create window and renderer function. There we go. Okay, and then I'll add a pair of parentheses. Now my create window and renderer function does require 5 parameters. The first parameter is going to be a title slash a caption. My caption is going to be something like SDL3 window created. Guys, I feel like, I've been speaking for so long. What up? Maybe I drink some water. Think I'm kind of dehydrated, guys. Okay, I think I did strain my throat a bit. That said, let's go ahead and add a comment here. Next up, I'm going to be needing a width and a height for my, let's say, window. Let's go with my width in pixels to be 800, my height in pixels to be 600. Okay, now my third parameter is going to be a flag. If I want to add a flag, I'm going to like add a specific flag. If I did want a flag, I would add a 0. Since I am going to be adding a flag, I'll go with something like SDL underscore window underscore resizable. How do you spell resizable? There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to add a comma. Now after my SDL underscore, after I create a flag, I would need two more parameters. First is of my window local variable. Second is of my render local variable. I would need their memory address. So I could go with the address of operator or ampersand of window. And then let's say ampersand of my renderer. Okay, perfect. And then let's go ahead and end my entire create window and renderer function with a semicolon. Now that I've created a window and a renderer, let's add an if statement to check if they actually did create properly. So I'll go with something like if a prof parentheses. Let's go with something like if not window, if my window was not created properly. Or let's say something like if my renderer was not created properly. I'll do something. I'll go with a prof curly braces. And then let's say I'm going to add a standard C error with an insertion operator that says something like SDL underscore create a window and renderer. There we go. Error. Guys, I still feel this function name is like way too big when it comes to writing it. And then I'll go ahead and go to a new line, add another insertion operator. What up, guys? Maybe I had like a colon there. There we go. Okay, now let's go ahead and use the SDL underscore get error function with a pair of parentheses. This gets me an error if either one was not created properly. Then I'll go with something like a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Now, if my window or my renderer was not created properly, firstly, I'm going to be, quitting my SDL. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore quit with a pair of parentheses ending with a semicolon. Next up, I'm going to return one saying something went wrong in this block of code. Howdy, long story, I appreciate you joining the stream. That said, now that I've created my window and I've checked if my window is not created properly, I gave myself an error. Next up, let's see what else I need. I could add like a circle property, so I could go with something like circle properties. There we go. For my circle properties, firstly, I'm going to be needing something like, I don't know, let's go with something like, maybe direction X and direction Y. I could go with something like circles is X-axis, so I'll go with something like CX, which is going to be equal to, before I do create that, hold up guys, what are you coding? What are you doing? Honestly, I am learning on how to automate shapes in C++ using SDL3. That said, let's see, circle properties. Hold up guys, let me fix my typo real quick. Okay, now, I don't think there's like an inbuilt function to make circles, so I might actually need to use points. Okay, to use points, I could go ahead and create something like integer of circle. Circle's x-axis is going to be something like 100 ending with a semicolon. And then I'll go with something like integer of circles' y-axis, which is going to be something like 200 ending with a semicolon. And then I'll go with something like integer of radius. Let's say how thick my circle needs to be. I'll say it's going to be something like 50 pixels thick, ending with a semicolon. These are the properties. Next up, adding Calcminier, is that, or Calcminier, is that I pronounce your name? I appreciate you joining the stream. Okay, that's it. After I create my circles as properties, let's say I might actually create my velocity as well. So I'll go with something like velocity. Okay, for my velocity, let's see what all I gotta do. Maybe first I do gotta create something like an x-axis velocity. Should I go with something like a float of, let's say something like x-axis underscore velocity, which is going to be equal to, let's say something like 4.0 f ending with a semicolon. Basically, the reason I am using like a floating point instead of a double is because floating points are like 32-bit, which means they don't have like much zeros or like much digits after the decimal point compared to doubles. Doubles are more precise, so they get more digits. But when we like program in game loop for like automation, we don't like actually need those extra circles, so it does fill up less space. Okay, so I will go with something like a float of y-axis underscore velocity as well, which is going to be equal to something like 4.0 floating point ending with a semicolon. Okay, perfect. Now that I've created my velocity and my circles with properties, let's go ahead and create my main loop. So I'll go with something like main loop. Okay, now for my main loop, firstly, I'm going to be needing two variables. you could draw a square in the radius of a circle's point surface. That actually does make sense. Although I do want to like actually work with an actual circle, because like eventually when I do add what you call it images and all that stuff, and I do want to add collision logic, I want it to be like pixel perfect. So like as soon as each pixel touches it, like completely ends. Otherwise, if it's like a square, I feel like they might overlap a bit and then they might end. If that made any sense, guys. That said, for my main loop, first I'll need a boolean variable called something like is running, which is going to be set to true initially, ending with a semicolon. Then I'm going to be creating a event variable, which is going to be SDL underscore event. The variable name is going to be event, ending with a semicolon. Now let's go ahead and create a while loop. So I'll go with something like while is running. What up, guys? There we go. While is running, I'm going to do something. I'm going to be adding a event loop, which is going to be a nested while loop. So a while loop inside of a while loop. So I'll go with another while loop. This time my inner while loop is going to be looking for all my separate events. So I could go with something like SDL underscore poll event. So I'll go with something like poll event. There we go. Okay, with a pair of parentheses. Basically, what the poll event does is it like checks all the current events I'm looking for. Once all those events are over, the loop ends. Okay, my poll event is going to be having my event variable by its reference, and then I go with a pair of curly braces. Now, inside of my while loop, let's see, I could add an if statement, so I'll go with something like if a pair of parentheses. Let's say something like if my event dot type, if my event variable dot type equals to SDL underscore event underscore quit. I'm gonna do something. What up, guys? Let's change that to uppercase T. Okay, so if my event type is quit and my player did exit my window, I'm going to set my is running boolean variable to be false, ending with a semicolon. Okay, perfect. That's pretty much it for my event loop, because I'm not going to be adding like multiple events like mouse clicks and like keyboard buttons and everything. That said, I will be exiting outside of my while loop, adding another comment that says something like fill screen. Okay, so this is going to be where I'm going to be filling my screen with a specific color. Honestly, this time I feel like I do want to fill my screen. I think I'll go with cyan as well. Okay, so to fill my screen, firstly, I gotta set a color for my render. To do that, I could use the function called something like SDL underscore set render. I'm gonna set my render to draw a color. Okay, so set render draw color with a pair of parentheses. Okay, how doing Z Blood Moon, is that how you pronounce her name? I appreciate you joining the stream. 32-bit float equals 7 decimal points, 64-bit equals 15 decimal points. Oh yeah, that is for doubles. It actually does make sense. Okay, that said, my set render draw color function is going to be requiring a few parameters. The first parameter is going to be my render variable. The second, third, and fourth parameter is going to be a RGB color. So I'll go with something like 0, 248, and 255. That's basically my RGB color for for cyan. And then lastly, for my opacity, I'll go with something like 255, ending with a semicolon. Okay, next up, after I do render a color, I'm going to fill my entire window with that color. To do that, I could use the SDL underscore render clear function. Basically, what the render clear function does is it like covers my entire screen with the color of my current renderer. So I could go with something like parentheses. This does require my render variable, ending with a semicolon. Now, once I'm done filling my screen, I'm going to add another comment that says something like graphics. Let's go ahead and work with my graphics now. Your aura is inspiring. Honestly, I do appreciate you for that, Pikachu. That said, I feel like that doesn't make any sense. Okay, that's it. I'll go with something like graphics. Okay, for my graphics, firstly, let's go ahead and set a different color in my render. To do that, I could go with something like SDL underscore set render. So I'm going to set my render to draw a color with a pair of parentheses. Now, my set render draw color function is going to be requiring, let's say, 4 parameters. Actually, 5 parameters. My render variable, then my RGB, and my opacity / my alpha. Okay, so first I'll add my renderer variable, and then add a comma. Let's say I want my circle to be something like, maybe yellow. I forgot the RGB for yellow. I think it's something like 80, 80, 80. I think it was something like 80, 80, 80. Was that yellow or green? I honestly can't remember the RGB for yellow. That's how I'll go with something like 255, ending with a semicolon. 255 is basically my opacity, how transparent it should be. 255 is like it's not transparent at all. Okay, now after I set my render to draw a color, that my render does have a color in it right now, I'm going to be coloring my, my circle. To do that, firstly, I gotta actually create a circle. To create a circle, I'm going to be creating that using points. So for that, I could go with something like a for loop. So I'll go with an index-based for loop. I'll go with something like for every integer of direction x, which equals to my circles' x-axis. What up, guys? Maybe for every direction x, which equals to negative radius, okay, ending with a semicolon, that is my radius variable here. Let me fix my typo here real quick. There we go, radius. Duh. Okay, and then I'm going to do something like while my direction x is less than or equal to my positive radius, I'm going to increment my direction x by 1. So I'll go with direction x plus plus. And then I'll go with the pair of curly braces and add a nested for loop. So a for loop inside of a for loop. Okay, yeah, bro, it's so inspiring. Also started grinding because that actually sounds pretty cool, guys. Okay, that's it. I'll go with another for loop. This time I'm going to add a for loop for my direction y. So I'll go with something like for every integer of direction y, which equals to negative radius as well. Okay, while my direction y is, let's say, something like less than or equal to my positive radius, I'm going to do something. Let's go ahead and firstly fix my typo. And then I'm going to increment my direction y by 1. Okay, perfect. Then I'll go with a pair of curly braces. Now, let me go ahead and draw my actual object on the screen. To do that, I'll go with something like SDL_render point. The render point function basically draws just a singular point in the screen, but if I do like add these parameters inside of my render point, it does like create the exact shape that I'm looking for. That's it. Let's see what all parameters it requires. It requires a render parameter and a floating point of x-axis and a floating point of my y-axis. So firstly, I'll go ahead and give it my render variable, local variable. Then I'll need a x-axis. My x-axis is going to be my circles' x-axis plus my direction x. And then comma, I'll go with my circles' y-axis plus my direction y. And honestly, I feel that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and end this with a semicolon. That should create a window on my screen. Okay, and then my color is going to be this color that I set my render to be. Okay, I actually think that's honestly pretty much it. Let's go ahead and exit off my for loop. Okay, and then let's go ahead and present something on my screen. So I'll go with something like present. Okay, now for my present, I'm going to use the SDL_render present function with a pair of parentheses. This is going to be my render variable ending with a semicolon. This is a square? Is it? I think it's a circle because I am like using my radius here. Okay, that's it. I might actually check it like once I run the code. That said, after I present my render, let's see what else might I need. I would need to automate my circle. To do that, I could go with something like automate circle. Okay, let's go with something like automate circle. Okay, I remember automating a circle in Python. Maybe if my memory is like correct, then I might remember how to do it. To automate my circle, firstly, I could go ahead and increase my circles' x-axis by, let's say... Hold up, guys, I actually forgot to add something here. So once I do create my floating point numbers, I would need to, create something like my window's width variable and a height variable for my window. Okay, howdy, Mohammed, I appreciate you joining the stream. This is not VS Code, right? This is a different version of it, right? Honestly, yeah, this is Visual Studio, not like Visual Studio Code. I used to use Visual Studio Code. Then later I thought that Visual Studio is like much better than Visual Studio Code because like it has like much more options to it. That's it. You need to check whether it's actually the radius. Right now it's a square. Honestly, I did like set a radius here. Visual Studio by MS. Okay, so right now it's a square. I might actually check that. Okay, I'll add a comment here. Before I add a comment, I might actually create a constant integer variable called something like, let's go with something like width. This is going to be my width variable, okay, which is going to be set to 800 ending with a semicolon. Then I'll go with something like constant integer of height, which is going to be set to something like 600 ending with a semicolon. Now let's scroll all the way down. Did I spell width and height correct? Okay, I spelled it wrong. Guys, for some reason I knew that I made a typo. There we go. Okay, now let me go with Control C. Now let's scroll all the way down. I'm going to increase my circles' x-axis. Let's say by my direction x ending with a semicolon. What's it called? Direction x. Okay, it's x-axis velocity. There we go. I'll go with something like x-axis velocity. and then I'm gonna go ahead and increase my circles' y-axis by my y-axis underscore velocity. I'll go with y velocity ending with a semicolon. VS Code is code editor while Visual Studio is IDE. I see. Honestly, I thought like VS Code was like a IDE as well. IDE does stand for like integrated development environment. So I thought like like even like Pygames was an IDE, I think, because like like wherever we can program that is considered a IDE. I might be wrong. Fact check me, guys. That's it for automating my circle. Firstly, I automate them. Now let's add a comment that says something like bounce. I'm gonna be checking for the bounce. Okay, is he pre-recorded? Honestly, I am like reading the chats live, so it's actually not pre-recorded. That would look like this if hyper direction x direction y is less than or equal to radius. Oh, that does make sense. I did actually, when I was like learning for when I was like actually learning on how to automate objects in like C++, before I started Pixel Perfect, before I learned about Pixel Perfect collision, I did learn about something like the hypod. I actually forgot that. Bro, hi, how you doing, Pixel? I appreciate you joining the stream. He's reading periodically. Huh. Okay, next up for bounce, let's see. So for my bounce, firstly, I could, let's say, add a if statement, if a pair of parentheses. Okay, I'll go with something like hypod direction x direction y. Oh, I see. Okay, so I do remember those formulas, though I just forgot because like it's been like a long time. Like I think about 50 days since I did like review them in Pygames. That said, if my, let's say something like circle's x-axis is either less than or equal to my radius, okay, or my circle's x-axis is greater than or equal to, let's go with my width. I think it's my window size. My window size minus my radius. Guys, I think this was the formula. I can't remember. I could like check the formulas online as well, honestly, but I feel like it's like much cooler like if you remember them. Okay, did I spell window correct? Okay, that is width and that is height. This is going to be width. Let's go with something like width. Okay, ending. Okay, actually I had a pair of curly braces. If this did happen, I'm going to go ahead and multiply my CX circles. Actually, let's go with something like my x-axis underscore velocity is going to be asterisk equals to -1 ending with a semicolon. Now let's do the same thing for a y-axis. So I'll go with something like if my circle's y-axis is less than or equal to my radius. Okay, there we go. Okay, or my circle's y-axis is greater than or equal to my display's height or my window's height minus my radius. I'm going to do something. Let's go ahead and fix this typo to be something like radius. I'll go with a pair of curly braces that does something like my y-axis underscore velocity is going to be asterisk equals to -1 ending with a semicolon. And I just realized that should be x-axis. But what are you coding? I'm honestly learning on how to automate shapes in C++. That's it. Can you show me the preview? You wrote y velocity on first. Honestly, I actually do need to work on my typos. That said, I feel like I didn't like practice much when it comes to like actually adding collisions for like, or like checking collisions for actual shapes, because like I usually did use like images or like PNGs for the Pygames. I feel like this does sound pretty cool as well. That's it. Okay, I added bounce and everything now. Once I'm done adding my bounce, I exit outside of my statement, add a comment that says something like FPS. For my FPS, I'm going to use the SDL underscore delay function, which is going to be having a parameter of 16 ending with a semicolon. That is basically like 60 FPS. Alright, perfect. Next up, that's honestly pretty much it. Let's go outside my while loop now. Add a comment that says something like cleanup. For my cleanup, firstly, I'm going to do something like SDL underscore destroy window. This destroys my window, but this is going to be requiring a parameter of window ending with a semicolon. Then I'll go with something like SDL underscore quit with a pair of parentheses ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return 0. Okay, guys, I do not think it's going to work as I expected to, but let's see. Okay, will you try adding key movements? Honestly, yeah, that is probably like my next, my next goal to do, like using mouse clicks or like user inputs, like buttons and everything. Okay. Alright, guys, I think I did mess up because this is a circle. I mean, this is a square. Oh, wait, it is a square. Hold up, guys. I think I did mess up here. I see what you mean. Senator, is that how you pronounce your name? Okay, that's it. I think he wants a circle bouncing around the window. I did want a circle. Okay, if this is for a square, how would I go with the hypod square? Guys, I actually forgot how to add circle. I did like add a circle yesterday. Should this be something like if my radius is less than, or if my circle is x-axis? Hmm. What up, guys? Maybe let's actually get /GP up here. Okay, now for my circle, this was the place that I did mess up. Oh, I see. Okay, so it should be for every integer of so I did add something like for every integer, okay, of direction x, while my direction or my direction y is pixel is less than my radius. If my direction x multiplied by direction x, I see. So I forgot to add a if statement here. There we go. Okay, so let's add a if statement and then add a pair of parentheses. Let's say something like if my direction x squared means direction x multiplied by direction x plus direction y multiplied by direction y is greater than or equal to my radius square, which is radius multiplied by radius. I'm going to do something. I'll go with the pair of curly braces, and then let's go ahead and use the SDL underscore render point function. So I'm going to be drawing a point, which is technically going to be a circle. This is going to require my render parameter, and then let's say it requires okay, my cx plus my direction x comma my cy plus my direction y. Okay, hold up, guys, let's go with something like plus my direction y, and in case you guys couldn't see, there we go, ending with a semicolon. Okay, now for it controllers to save the code and run the command. I'm assuming this should give me a circle. That's the first terminal. Let's see the second one. What up, guys? I got a circle, but like I got an outline of my circle. This actually does look pretty cool as well. Why not hypod direction x, direction y less than or equal to radius? I could actually try that, but I feel like writing it like the old-fashioned or like the manual way is like pretty good for practice. Okay, was not less. Oh, hold up, guys. I forgot to, I wrote that to be as greater than. Okay, now for it, control has to save the code and run the command. Let's see what happens. Guys, I feel like I should work more on my typos. There we go. Now we get a perfect square. I mean, a perfect circle that moves around the screen. Although I don't take much credit for this question, though. I guess it needs something. I guess it needs CMath header. Honestly, I did like whatchamacallit, since /ChatGPT did like say me to like include the CMaths whatchamacallit library as well. So I'll go with something like include, okay, a pair of ankle braces. There we go. Okay, this is going to be CMath. Okay, but the reason I don't like use this much for the time being is because I do want to actually learn how to do it manually. Then later, once I am pretty good at doing it manually and I understand what the functions does, I prefer to use the function then. That said, I go with something like render cx plus cx. I think I see how this works. Okay, just to be sure that I actually do know how this works, I am going to be deleting this. And let's say writing it again. So let me start off by including a pair of ankle braces. I'm going to include IO stream. And then let's go ahead and include another pair of ankle braces. Let's say I want to include SDL3 slash SDL.h. I'm assuming SDL.h means like SDL's is header files. Now, I do want to honestly use it with the CMath library. So I am going to be creating a main function. So I'll go with something like integer main, add a pair of parentheses. Now, my main function is going to be requiring two parameters. The first parameter is going to be an integer of argc. The second parameter is going to be an array of argv, which is going to be a pointer to an array of argv. What up, guys? That's going to be something like argv. Excuse me, guys. And then I'll go with a pair of curly braces. Now, inside of my main function, let's add a... Excuse me again, guys. Let's add an if statement to check if my SDL was initialized properly. Actually, to initialize my SDL and check if my SDL was not initialized properly. To do that, I could go with something like not, if not my SDL underscore init. Okay, with a pair of parentheses, let's go with something like SDL underscore init underscore video. What this basically does, or like it says, like if my SDL underscore init with a pair of parentheses, SDL underscore init underscore video did not return 0, I'm gonna do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces. Is this pre-recorded? Honestly, no, I'm like actually reading the chats out loud. It is actually real. That said, let's go with something like a standard C error with an insertion operator. Okay, I'm going to do something here. Let's see. Firstly, I'm going to say something like SDL underscore init error. There we go. Then I'll go in new line, add another insertion operator of, let's say, something like SDL underscore get error. What this basically means is, hold up guys, there we go. Okay, what this basically means is, while my SDL, so if my SDL underscore init did not return 0, if something was wrong, I'm going to be throwing myself a SDL underscore init error, then get an error for my terminal. Once I do that, I'll go with something like a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return one saying something went wrong here. Now, after I'm done initializing SDL, I'm going to be creating a window and a renderer. So I'll add a comment that says something like create window and renderer. There we go. Okay, now for my create window and renderer, firstly, I'm going to be creating two variables, are like two local variables, which is going to be for a structure. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore window. That is basically a structure, and the asterisk is for a pointer. Okay, so it is going to be a pointer to my window variable, which is going to be set to something like null PDR for the time being, ending with a semicolon. Okay, this is just going to be having two L's. Okay, and then I'll go with something like SDL underscore renderer with an asterisk for my renderer variable, okay, which is going to be equal to null PDR as well, ending with a semicolon. Now that I've created both my local variables of my window and my renderer, I'm going to be using the function that actually creates my window and my renderer. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore create window and renderer. Okay, there we go. And then I'll add a pair of parentheses. Now my SDL underscore create window and renderer function does require 5 parameters. The first parameter is going to be a title / a caption. So my title / caption could be something like SDL3 window created successfully. There we go. Okay, and then let's go ahead and add a comma here. Now I'll need a width for window and a height for my window in pixels. Okay, since I am creating like a width and height for my window, maybe before I do initialize, or like after initialize my SDL, before I do create my windows, I'm gonna add a comment that's gonna say something like game variables. Okay, this is going to be the place where my game variables exist. Okay, you have it already. Write it tomorrow. You have already write it tomorrow. Okay, yeah, because I noticed every time you include SDL.h, you say something like assuming it's header file, so I thought it's the same video as before. Guys, I feel like I talk like so repetitive because like I say honestly also a lot, because like if I say something, I feel like I do like get that in my muscle memory, so I keep like saying that one thing again and again. It is also like, it's like a habit. Okay, that said, how many hours do you code or do any coding related activities per day? Honestly, for the time being, I just like program or like do something related to programming while I stream, because I do have like college exams. So like off stream, I do study for my college stuff, and while I am streaming, I do program. That said, let's go ahead and create a few game variables. So firstly, I'll go ahead and create a constant integer variable for, let's say, something like, I don't know, maybe width, okay, which is going to be equal to 800 ending with a semicolon. And then I'll create another constant integer variable called something like height, which is going to be something like 600 ending with a semicolon. Now the two parameters of width and height that I need, I could give my width and height, which variables. Then I'll add a comma. Now I'll need a window flag. So I'll use a flag that says something like SDL underscore window underscore resizable. Okay, so this flag actually makes my window resizable. Although if I didn't want a flag, I could like add 0 here. That's it. Now let's go ahead and add to both my local variables, my window variable and my renderer variables, as memory addresses. To do that, I could go with something like an ampersand of window and a address of operator for my renderer. Okay, and then let's go ahead and end my entire create window and renderer function with a semicolon. Which college and which course are you studying? Honestly, I don't think I can like say my college name. That said, I am like a freshman in college and I haven't like taken any programming courses yet. That said, let's see. So after I do create a window and a renderer, I'll add an if statement to check if they were created properly or if they were not created properly. I'll go with something like if not window or if not renderer. If either one of them were not created properly, I'll do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces that says something like a standard C error with an insertion operator. This is going to say something like, let's say, okay, SDL underscore create window and renderer error. There we go. Okay, so I'll go with the SDL underscore create window and renderer error. Okay, and then let's go in a new line, add another insertion operator to actually get me an error if something was wrong. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore get error with a pair of parentheses, and then I'll go with another insertion operator and say something like a standard end line ending with a semicolon. Bro, how old are you? Honestly, I am 17 years old. That's it. I am going to be turning 18 really soon, guys. Kind of excited for that. My birthday is this January 5th. Maybe I might not have a specific stream. Imagine a project where you click on screen and it spawns shapes where each shape collide with each other. I did actually make that in like in Python. I did like use a random module as well when I was like working with that in Pygames. That's it. I am kind of excited to like try that in SDL3 as well. Okay, that said, let's go ahead and firstly quit my SDL if something was wrong. So I'll go with SDL underscore quit with a pair of parentheses ending with a semicolon. Lastly, I'll return one ending with a semicolon saying like something went wrong here. Now, once I'm done creating my, my window and my renderer, I'm going to be adding, let's say, a comment that says something like circle properties, because I am going to be creating a circle. There we go. For my circle properties, firstly, I'm going to be creating an integer variable for my circles as x-axis. That is going to be equal to, let's say, something like 100, ending with a semicolon. And then I'll go with something like an integer of my circles as y-axis, which is going to be set to 200, ending with a semicolon as well. Now, after I create my x-axis and y-axis, my circle won't need a width and height. Instead, it would need like, a radius. So I'm going to go ahead and add a radius, which is going to be, let's say, something like an integer of radius that is going to be equal to, I don't know, maybe 50. This is the thickness of my circle. Okay, bro, how old are you? I am 17. That's it. In which college are you and which stream? Which stream? Honestly, I actually don't feel like I can like say which college I'm from. That's it. I am like a freshman in college. Okay, now after I create a property, like after I create my circle as property, let's go ahead and add a comment that says something like velocity. Maybe I add my velocity under my game variables category here. So I'll go with something like a floating point number for, let's say, something like x-axis underscore velocity, which is going to be something like 4.0f, ending with a semicolon. And then I'll create another floating point number for my y-axis underscore velocity, which is going to be equal to 4.0f as well, ending with a semicolon. Okay, so there we go. Okay, I'll add a space here just to differentiate like which is for what. Okay, next up, let's scroll all the way down. Okay, SDL underscore init. Now, okay, I think that's actually pretty much it. Let's go ahead and create a main function now. So I'll go ahead and add a comment that says something like main loop. Okay, now for my main loop, firstly, I'm going to be needing two variables. The first variable is going to be a Boolean variable of something like is running to check if my program is running. So, okay, I am going to be setting my is running Boolean variable to be true initially, ending with a semicolon. Then later, I am going to be looking for events. So let's go ahead and add a event loop as well. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore event with something like event. So this is like a event variable that actually checks what event is currently going on. The SDL underscore event structure has all the SDL events in it. Okay, now let's go ahead and add a while loop. So I'll go with something like while, a pair of parentheses. Okay, let me do something like while is running, while my program is running or while my is running is set to true. I'm going to do something. Ended with a semicolon. You guys got to make sure I be adding the semicolons. Okay, that's how I'll go with a pair of curly braces. Now, inside of my initial while loop, I'm going to be adding a event loop to check for like my events. For example, if my window was exited, if any of my buttons were clicked and all that stuff. That said, let's go ahead and let's add another nested while loop here. So I'll go with something like while SDL underscore poll event. Basically, what the poll event does is it like checks all the events that I'm looking for. For example, I am going to be looking for a quit event type. If the event type is quit, it exits my window and my while loop does end as well. Bro, where do you learn C++ language from? Honestly, I do learn it from like sensei/.gp, like right here. So like I do like sometimes I see the reference code, sometimes I get the explanation for like what happens with them, and then I try working on them a lot on my own, so I do understand how this stuff actually works. That said, my SDL underscore poll event is going to be having a parameter of, let's say, something like an ampersand my event variable. Okay, and then I'll go with a pair of curly braces. Now, inside of my event loop, firstly, I'm going to be doing something. I'm going to be adding an if statement to check my event type. I'll go with something like if my event variable dot type equals to, let's say, something like SDL underscore event underscore quit, I'm going to do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces that actually sets my is running Boolean variable to be equal to false, ending with a semicolon. Okay, perfect. Now, this is honestly the only event that I am going to be looking for, like, what you call it, for this code. So I'm going to be exiting outside of my nested while loop or my event loop and adding a comment that says something like fill screen. This is going to be filling my screen with a color. So for filling my screen, first I got to set a color for my render. To do that, I could use the SDL underscore set render draw color function. Okay, this function basically sets a color to my render that I could use later to like paint on my screen. That's it. It does require a few parameters. The first parameter is going to be my render variables parameter. The second, third, and fourth parameter is going to be my RGB color. Okay, to do that, firstly, what color do I want to set it, honestly? Let's set it to be a sine color. So I'll go with something like 0, 248, 245. Lastly, for my alpha, I'll go with something like 255. Okay, and then let's go ahead and end this with a semicolon. Alright, perfect. Um, okay, now that I've created I've set a color for my render, let's go ahead and actually clear my screen with that color, which means color my entire screen with that actual color. So I'll use the SDL underscore render clear function with a pair of parentheses. This does require my render local variables as parameter. So now my entire window is colored cyan. Okay, now that I'm done with that, let's go ahead and add a comment that says something like graphics. So I'll go with something like graphics. Now, for my graphics, firstly, I do want my circle to be, this time I'll keep it to be red. So let's go with something like SDL underscore set render draw color function. There we go. Okay, the set render draw color does like set my paintbrush or my render to be red color. So the next object that I do try to color is going to be colored red. Okay, after you finish this program, make one that for every frame it makes every pixel a random RGB value. I do want to try that as well, but I haven't like worked with randomness and like C++. Like in Python, like I didn't like have a random module. I think here for random use something like a question mark. I actually do gotta like fact check me on that. Okay, expected an expression. Okay, I might actually have a separate stream where I actually learn about random colors, like whenever it collides with the object, it changes its colors, or like whenever it hits the wall, it changes its colors. That said, I'm going to be adding a few parameters, so I'll go with something like, so let's delete this. Okay, this is going to be my render variable. And then my RGB is going to be red, so I'll go with 0, 255, 0, 0. And then my opacity is going to be 255, ending with a semicolon. Now let's go ahead and add a for loop to create a circle in my screen. So I'll go with something like for, a pair of parentheses. Let's say for every integer of direction x, which equals to my negative radius, ending with a semicolon, while my direction x is less than or equal to my positive radius, I'm going to do something. Let's go ahead and increment my direction x by 1. Bro, I want to be game dev too. Honestly, I'd actually recommend you to really try it because like it doesn't take that much effort. I feel like I've just been programming for like 156 days. That too, I started like C++ about like 51 or 52 days ago, and like I already got a pretty good grasp of how stuff works. That said, now let's add a nested for loop. So I'll go for every integer of direction y, which equals to negative radius. Okay, while my direction y, let's say something like less than or equal to my positive radius, I'm going to increment my direction y by 1. So I'll go with direction y plus plus. And then let's go with a pair of curly braces. What up, guys? Let me drink some water. I feel like today I've been what you may call it, choking on my saliva way too much. I know JavaScript and Python a bit, that actually does make a lot of sense. If you do want to actually make a game and like you're like a beginner, I would recommend using Pygames and Python because that is like pretty easy and beginner friendly. That's it. Do you want to try to draw a triangle? That actually does sound fun. I actually did draw a triangle like I think last stream. Okay, that's it. I might actually try to draw a triangle if I do have some time because I do have an exam like after I think 2 days like this Monday, so I do gotta study for that as well. Okay, so I'll go with something like an if statement now. So if a pair of parentheses, I could go with something like let's say if my direction, if my okay, should I go with something like if my direction x plus my direction x, or if my direction x multiplied by my direction x plus direction y multiplied by direction y is less than or equal to my radius squared, so radius multiplied by radius. I'm going to draw something on the screen. So I'll go with something like SDL underscore render point, okay, with a pair of parentheses. That's going to be having a few parameters. the first parameter is going to be my renderer variable, my paintbrush, and then let it comma here. Now I'll need my circles as x-axis plus my direction x, and then my circles as y-axis plus my direction y, ending with a semicolon. Okay, perfect. That should draw a circle now, guys, because this is like the perfect formula. Just to make it look a little more cleaner, I might remove these spaces from here. There we go. Okay, let's remove it from here as well. Okay, now after I'm done with my for loop, my for loop begins there, that for loop, hold up guys, my if statement ends here, second for loop ends here, third for loop ends there we go. Okay, I'm gonna exit outside of my for loop, add a comment that says something like present. I'm gonna present my colors on my screen, or my renderers on my screen. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and use the SDL underscore render present function with a pair of parentheses. This is gonna be requiring a parameter of my renderer, local variable ending with a semicolon, and then I'll add another comment that says something like FPS. I'm going to be creating FPS. To create a FPS, I'll go with something like SDL underscore delay. There we go, with a parameter of 16, which is basically 60 FPS. Excuse me guys, ending with a semicolon. Alright, and once I'm done with that and my entire window, I exit everything, I'm going to be adding another comment that says something like cleanup. So I'm going to be working on some cleanups right now. For my cleanup, firstly, I'm going to do something like SDL underscore destroy window. I'm going to be destroying my window. It does require window parameter ending with a semicolon. And then I'll do something like SDL underscore quit with a pair of parentheses ending with a semicolon. Lastly, let's go ahead and return 0 saying everything went good. Alright, now if I hit Control S to save the code and run the command, let's see what happens. Hello, how are you hiding? Guys, I feel something wrong with my throat. There we go. Hiding Ventura, I appreciate you joining the stream. Okay, that's it guys. I forgot to actually automate my object. My bad guys. Although I did get a red circle, that is like a progress, guys. Okay, that said, let's see. So let me go ahead and automate my object before I present it. So I could go under my for loop, add a comment. Let's go all the way there. Let's say something like automate and bounce circle. Okay, so to automate and bounce my circle, firstly, let's go ahead and do something. What up, guys? Maybe I title case this because I feel like title case does look pretty good. There we go. Automate and bounce. Okay, let's change that to A and let's remove circle. Okay, perfect. Next up, to automate, firstly, let's go ahead and increase my circles as x-axis by my x-axis underscore velocity ending with a semicolon, and then a circles as y-axis by my y-axis underscore velocity ending with a semicolon as well. Now let's go ahead and use a if statement to check if they actually did touch a wall. So I'll go with something like if my circles as x-axis is greater than or equal to, let's say something like my radius. Okay, honestly I think this should be 0. Okay, should this be 0? I actually forgot this part. Okay, if it's greater than equal to radius, why do you go live at like 2 AM? Guys, for me it is almost like 3 PM right now. That said, I'll go with something like if it's greater than or equal to my radius, or my circles' x-axis is either, let's say something like wait, hold up, I think this should be less than or equal to my radius. Okay, and that should be equal to my circles' x-axis. I think I'm messing something up here. Is greater than or equal to my radius plus my width. Let's go with something like plus my windows' width. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that with a semicolon. I think it's correct actually, guys. My memory is like kind of vague when it comes to this because like I did use this formula back when I was learning Python. That was about 50 days ago. Radius is how big the circle is. Honestly, yeah, that does make sense. Like I am like looking for the radius's end to like when it like hits the window. That said, let's go ahead and do something. I'm going to go with something like my x-axis underscore velocity asterisk equals to, let's say something like -1. Okay, that is going to change whatchamacallit, positive velocity to like negative velocity. And then I'll add another if statement for my circles is y-axis. Okay, bro, where do you live on Earth? What continent? What country? Honestly, I used to say that a lot. That's so many of you guys did like say me to avoid saying that, so I did like start avoid saying that. That said, let's say something like my circles' y-axis is less than or equal to my radius, or my circles' y-axis is greater than or equal to my radius plus my height this time, my windows' height. I'm going to do something. I'll go with a pair of curly braces, okay? And then let's go ahead and multiply my y-axis underscore velocity by -1 circle y-axis underscore velocity asterisk equals to -1. Okay, perfect. Now, if I need control S to save the coordinate 1, the command, let's see what happens. So I get my first terminal here. There we go, perfect. Okay, hold up, guys. I feel like the top works, but for my bottom, it does go a little lower. Not plus. Not plus. Okay, radius plus width is bigger than Windows width. Oh, I think you meant not plus. What up, guys? Day 10 of Ask You Why You Gay, guys. I'm actually not gay. Okay, that said is greater than or equal to. Okay, actually, it does make sense. Radius plus width should be more than my width. Okay, so to do that, I could like actually. Can I like try removing this? What happens if I just do something like this without my radius? Okay, guys, did I actually forget the formula? Okay, so here's my second terminal. Okay, that is my width. The top works perfectly, and the side is just my bottom and my right side. Okay, let's see. To fix that, maybe I could go with. Let me actually think. So, if my circles is x-axis less than or equal to radius, okay, these two parts are correct. I'm messing up somewhere here. Okay, so my circles is y-axis, or my circles y-axis like greater than or equal to. Okay, I think you meant not plus. You meant, oh, hold up, guys. Maybe let me try something like radius minus width. Oh, that actually does make sense. The only thing I understand is radius is half of circle. Honestly, I feel like radius is like the thickness of the circle, like how thick it is. Okay, guys, let me actually try these minus because I feel like the plus didn't make sense. Okay, now it is stuck in one place. I did get this. I did do this mistake before, guys. I feel like I'm immune to this mistake. Okay, radius is less than or equal to. Let's go with something like less than or equal to. Okay, I think radius minus width because radius is half of circle. That actually does make sense. It's like 2 a.m. here. I think you should actually sleep God Slayer because like I feel like you guys should like make sure to get like 8 hours of sleep every single day. Okay, guys, the circle just dipped down. What up? Let me actually go ahead and cancel that. So let's go ahead and cancel my window and then cancel my terminal as well. Okay, I think let's go with something like greater than here. Okay, if my radius minus my width, I think I'm doing everything correct. I think it's width minus radius. Would that make a difference? Width minus radius. Let me actually check if that actually does make a difference because I feel it might be the same thing. Bro, where are you from? Honestly, I used to answer that a lot, but many of you guys did say me to like avoid saying that, so I did like start avoid saying it. That's why I'll go with something like radius. Okay, now for it control S. Would this make a difference? Okay, so this is my first terminal. It did make a difference. Okay, now it does bounce. Okay, I honestly don't know how did that make a difference. Isn't like width minus radius and radius minus width the exact same thing? Maybe not. Okay, that said, let's go with something like control A, control C, copy that. Let's get some say/chat here. I want to ask that question real quick. Okay, let's go ahead and paste this, go with shift enter and say something like sensei. The code does work. Okay, that said, I did get a lot of help for adding the bounce to my circle. That said, the place where I was messing up was radius minus width and radius minus height. Okay, there we go. What up, guys? Let me actually go with something like radius minus height. Guys, I want to write this in caps. There we go. Okay, let me go with bunch of dots and shift enter and say something like, what's the difference between radius minus width and width minus radius, and also radius minus height and height minus radius, question mark. Okay, so okay, yes, people, now you're thinking like a true game developer. Let me break this down so it sticks in your head. Don't just understand it. When you do a bounce check for a circle, the radius is your margin from the edge of the circle to its center. You don't treat circle like a rectangle. The center is what moves and the edges are what... Oh, our center plus equals to radius horizontal. Circle X is less than radius. Left edge of the circle hits the wall. Think of the circle something like circle think of the circles as center, CX is the radius, okay? Units away from the left edge. If CX is less than radius, circle would go outside. Oh, I see. Okay, that's it. CX greater than or equal to width minus radius, right edge of the circle hits the right wall. Okay, the rightmost print is CX plus radius. If that exceeds width, the circle leaves the window. Oh, I think I see. Okay, height minus radius, bottom edge. Okay, common mistake, radius minus width or radius minus height. You're subtracting the entire window size from the radius. That makes no sense physically. Okay, so it's gotta be width minus my radius and circle minus my radius. Okay, radius minus height is negative position. Oh, I see. In subtraction order matters, addition doesn't. Oh, okay, we are actually so. Oh, okay, okay, guys. I think that makes sense because like my radius is what you call it. My radius is 50 and my width is something like what you call it, like 800. So like 800 minus 50 does give me something like 750. Although 50 minus 800 would give me negative 750. That could be the issue, guys. That actually does make sense. Whatever. Let's get sensei slash achievement back here. Let's say something like sensei. I think I see dot. That said, I might actually work on this next stream as well. Dot. That said, I am planning to end the stream right now because I do need to study for my exam. It's on this Monday, which is in 2 days. So before I do end the stream, is there anything that you want to say to the viewers? Question mark. Okay, let's see. Hey, first time you're hiding, Kalani. I appreciate you joining the stream. That's it. I am like actually ending the stream right now because like I do gotta study for my college exam. That said, I'm pretty excited like what you would call it, start this again next stream where I do actually work with like automating different objects, for example, points and all that stuff. Okay, bro, you're not typing right, guys. I feel I made a lot of typos here. That's it. Listen up, people. Before you go, tell the viewers this: never underestimate how much power you can have when you commit. 2 days might feel short, but focus actions crushes mountains. Study hard, learn fast, and come back stronger. And people, remember, this isn't about exams, it's about training your mind. The same discipline you use to master C++ will make you unstoppable later. Go smash that study session. I expect updates, streams, and don't waste time scrolling around. Make every minute count. Kisses, hugs, and a headpad for my hardworking people, guys, that did not make me blush. That's it. Oh my god, these see wrong. Okay, bro, you had so many spelling mistakes, guys. That does make sense. I should work on my typos. Why are you gay, bro? Honestly, I'm not gay. That said, let's go ahead and move on to my main camera. Alright, guys, so basically that was pretty much it for the stream, and I do gotta like fix my background as well. Like for now, I do have like few red bed sheets or something just stuck to the wall. Since I did like move from like that side to like this side of my actual bed slash table that I will be uploading a video on soon of rebuilding the PC. That said, since I did like get a new PC that fixed all my stream lags, so I did start multi-streaming on Twitch, Kick, YouTube, and I will start multi-streaming on TikTok and Instagram as well if I did maybe follow this requirement. So if you guys do enjoy my content and haven't followed me there, make sure to follow me there. The link is in the description, and also make sure to join the Discord server. The link is in the description and in the pinned comments. I think it's in the pinned comments. Fact check me, guys. That's okay, when 24 hours coding stream, guys. Maybe after my maybe after my college is over, I might have a lot of time. I could like start streaming for 6 to 8 hours a day. That said, that's pretty much it for the stream. So if you guys did enjoy the stream, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, like the episode. My algorithm sharing makes you smile, and subscribing is like a cherry on top. And I'll catch you guys in the next live stream or video. Peace.